Hey guys, I want to wish everyone a happy and healthy new year. In this coming season, 2025, there's one player that I'm very excited about, and I'm very careful to make proclamations of greatness too early because there's a lot of pressure on young players. But this player could possibly be a challenge to Sinner and Alcaraz, maybe not in 2025, maybe a couple of years from now, because he's extremely talented and he happens to have one of the best forehands that I've seen in a long time. And this player's name is
Joao Fonseca.
I already analyzed Fonseca's serve, and I'm going to link that video in the pinned comment. But in today's video, let's break down Fonseca's forehand, and it is very interesting. So first of all, Fonseca is able to create a tremendous amount of power. During the tournament in Rio, where he played extremely well, we saw some blistering forehand winners. One in particular against Garin went viral, where he on the run blasted a forehand down the line and hit that forehand so unbelievably hard. Now we're going to get into great detail and why his forehand is so good. He has all the fundamentals. He has a very clean technique, but many other players have all the fundamentals as well. And sometimes it comes down to talent. The reason I think Fonseca is naturally able to hit the ball very hard on the forehand, and not only on the forehand, also on the serve and his backhand, is that he naturally has a very fast arm. And when he's set up well on the forehand, he can blast that ball very hard. But it's not only that. Even when he's in defensive situations where he's unable to rotate and use his body, he still manages to hit winners and hit the ball extremely hard on his forehand side. That tells me that there's some natural ability there and that Fonseca indeed has a naturally fast arm. So when it comes to his technique on the forehand, it's very textbook. He has a modern forehand. He drops the racket towards the side. He initiates his rotation on the bottom portion of the racket drop. He makes contact with his dominant shoulder in front on the vast majority of his forehands. And he has a swing path that is ubiquitous on the ATP Tour. It's a heavy topspin swing path. Just imagine a diagonal line from the contact going upwards. That's what pretty much all ATP players have, is that heavy topspin swing path. Now Fonseca utilizes his body really well. He will start his forehand with his chest turned towards one fence, and when he's done with his forehand, a vast majority of times his chest will be pointed towards the other side fence. So he utilizes full torso rotation to accommodate the swing path. Now one topic that I haven't discussed on my YouTube channel, I talked about this in one of my Q&As on intuitivetennis.com. I'm going to link that video in the description. And the topic in that Q&A was whether players rotate when they make contact. And the answer is yes and no. Sometimes players will hold the rotation right around the contact, and other times they will rotate while they make contact. And in Fonseca's case, depending on what circumstance he finds himself in, depending on what his intention is, he will sometimes rotate as he's making contact with the ball, while other times he will hold the rotation as the racket is going up, and he will then accommodate the swing path with his torso at a later place. Now the reason why I like Fonseca's forehand so much is that it reminds me of one of my favorite forehands of all time, which is Juan Martín del Potro. And look, all players load and unload on the forehand. There's no doubt about it. And to some extent, all players do what I'm about to show you. But the way Del Potro used to load and unload on his forehand was a tad different from other players because he did it in a very rhythmic way. And I made a video a long time ago in 2020 on forehand timing. This video did really well. And in this video, I explained that in order to have a continuous swing on the forehand, players must wait to initiate their swing. So in essence, players do not take their racket back early. Players will wait with their racket towards the side until the ball has bounced on their side, or sometimes later, to actually initiate the swing. This will ensure players that the swing indeed is not only more continuous, but is also faster. Because what would naturally happen if you take your racket back too early is that you would have to pause your swing in the take back, and now you wouldn't be able to accelerate in a continuous way. You would have to accelerate more suddenly without that extra room where the racket can build up speed more gradually. Now, in my second ever YouTube video, I talked about the three-part sequence on the forehand. And you have to understand that while players wait with the racket to their side to initiate their swing. This doesn't mean that the players are not preparing early. Players prepare extremely early on their forehand, and the first move that players execute is the actual turn towards the side, is then the setting up of the ball, and then the swing. It's the three-part sequence. So the preparation is extremely quick on the forehand. It has to be because the game is extremely quick, but the actual stroke is initiated when the ball is very close to the player to ensure that the swing indeed is continuous. So what Del Potro used to do, just like many other players, Del Potro used to wait with his racket towards the side until the ball was very close to him around the bounce, and he would then do something that I compared to a dance. He would have a very dynamic loading and unloading. He would begin this dynamic load with a little hop into the loading position towards the top portion of the racket drop. So there would be a hop, and then when that racket got to the bottom portion of the racket drop, the feet would be set, and this dynamic load would ensure that there would be a dynamic unload as well. And this looks unbelievably rhythmic, just like a dance, and it results in a tremendous amount of power. And I'm seeing this exact same thing on the Fonseca forehand. Of course, not on all forehands. This specific loading and unloading requires a little bit of time. So you will mostly see this on balls that are a little bit slower, where Fonseca has a little bit more time to set up. He will of course be forced to hit the forehand just like every other player with the regular load and unload. But when there's a little bit more time, what you will see is Fonseca doing that rhythmic loading and unloading just like Del Potro. Well, he will move his feet and then he will hop into the load, set his feet on the bottom portion of the racket drop, and then very dynamically unload his body and rip the forehand really hard most of the time for winners. Last year around the same time, I had a series going on my YouTube channel, the 10-day tennis transformation with my student Felipe, where in one of the episodes I was teaching him this specific rhythm. And while it might be difficult to do it like Fonseca and Del Potro, where you're hopping into the load on your forehand, that might be tough to pull off, but what you have to try to learn is to not set your feet too early on the forehand, because you're not going to be able to dynamically load and unload. Your feet will be stuck and it's going to be more difficult to unload. So avoid the temptation to set your feet too early on the forehand. So two things that you have to remember. Avoid the temptation to take your racket back early on the forehand. You're going to have to wait until the ball is very close to your side. Of course, if the ball gets very deep on you, you're going to have to abbreviate your swing a little bit, and you're going to have the racket more towards the back as the ball is bouncing on your side. But for regular balls, your regular rally ball, you can wait with the racket to your side until it has bounced. Now, of course, you're going to move your feet to set the ball up. And now you're going to have to avoid the temptation to set your feet too early and to plant your feet before you have initiated the stroke. And you can initiate your loading on the top portion of your racket drop, which will ensure you that once the racket has reached the bottom portion, both of your feet are going to be planted into the ground. And now in the context of the stroke, the racket is already accelerating fast. You're trying to make contact with the ball. You're naturally going to start unloading more dynamically. So next time you watch Fonseca play, pay attention to his dynamic loading and unloading, where he has a little bit more time, where he starts dictating play with his forehand. He starts blasting the ball. The opponent is playing defense. It is truly fun to watch, and it reminds me so much of Juan Martín del Potro. I'm super excited about Fonseca, and let's see how he performs in 2025.
Ready?
Ready.
Jo.
Jo.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, but then you close more the O and the N. So Then you close. You make the nasal sound and then João. Yes, go.
João.
And then you close faster. Yes, João.
João.
Yes, João Fonseca.
Joao Fonseca.
Yes.
Was that good?
Let's work on the João again.
João.
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 Yes, but now I say faster, João.
João.
Yes, perfect.
Can you say it?
João Fonseca.
Can you say it a little bit faster?
João Fonseca.
Joao Fonseca.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.